White, Huskahalt, and Chase Isquis Inscomhistion. My name is Justin Peters. I am from the Okanagan Indian Band, and I am an alumni of Okanagan College. This past summer in 2020, I started my new position as the tour coordinator for the Indigenous Garden. Here today, I'm going to take you through the process of making salves. First off, we're going to go through our medicines that we harvested from the traditional Okanagan territory. We're going to go through the infusions. We have 5 infusions here, and we're going to go over which plants they are, the process of gathering them and harvesting them, and what their medicinal values are. After that, we're going to go through the process of making salves, the ingredients, the right ingredients, and the process of boiling them or cooking them up and serving them up, and how to preserve them and how to use them. So thank you for joining our workshop, and let's get started. So below here we have 5 infusions of our traditional medicines that grow here in the Okanagan. First we have arnica, which is a type of flower, and this infusion is used for muscle aches, pain. So once we make a salve out of it, if you have like achy joints or muscle pain, apply it over the skin of those areas over a few days, and it helps the pain, it helps heal. So it doesn't just help the pain go away, it helps the muscle sort of recuperate faster. Here we have an infusion of the Okanagan sunflower, those sunflowers you see every spring that are everywhere. And the whole plant's edible, from the tip of the petals to the bud, from the stem to the 8-foot deep roots they have. If you ever try digging these roots up, they go on forever. So we made a infusion with the heads, and when you make the infusion of the Okanagan sunflower and you make it into a salve, it helps with burns. It really helps with burns, hot skin, it kind of cools you down, and it also works as sort of a sunscreen, so it's really good from protecting from the heat. So it was collected during the springtime and made into a salve so that it could be used later on in the year as a antihistamine, or as a, say you can burn yourself all year, so if you burn yourself on a fire, like, it doesn't have to be a sunburn, it could just be a burn from a fire. So that's what the sunflower infusion is used for, and that's what we're going to use as an example later on in this workshop. Over here we have the rose petal, which we harvested in early June. The rose petals, they're the pink little roses that grow everywhere in the Okanagan pretty much. They are very high in vitamin C. So you can take the petals and you can take the bulbs and you can take the buds and you can make a tea out of them, and you can eat it raw, but you can make a tea out of it. It's very high in vitamin C and good for your immune system. When made into an infusion and into a salve, you can put it on your skin, and it helps moisturize your skin. So say if you have dry hands or dry skin, maybe some eczema or something like that, it helps moisten it up. Maybe you got dirty, dry hands from working in the garden, so it works well with that. And we have some examples here of what they look like dried, the rose petals and the rose buds. And they get kind of flaky, but not too bad. They're pretty good. And I don't know if you could see it from there, but if you don't like vegetables or you don't like fruit and you just want to get your vitamin C in one day, just pluck a couple petals off of a rose bush, and you're good for the day. Doesn't taste too bad either. The next infusion we have is plantain. Also, some people call it frog hands or frog leaves. I just call it plantain, but you can identify it because it has these little strands that go through the leaf, like these little fingers, little strands that go through it that are webbed together. And that's used for basic first aid properties. It's used for cuts or scabs. It's an antihistamine, antiseptic. It's really good to put on injuries. So maybe small open cuts, or what's that? Not shingles, but the other stuff, cirrhosis. It's really good for that. And then we have chamomile. Chamomile it's a skinny yellow and white flower. Kind of looks like a weed, but it has a pretty little flower top, little orange bulb, and white leaves around it. This can be made into a tea or a syrup. It helps with colds. It helps with basically everything Pepto-Bismol does: nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea, all that stuff. But it comes from a cute little little yellow flour instead of pink slime from the store. So it's really good. And when made into a salve, it helps with baby rashes. It helps with rashes on your skin, like if you're chafing or if your baby has a rash, it's really good to put on your baby. It comes from a flour, it comes from an oil, it comes from natural ingredients. So it's not some weird synthetic stuff that you get from a store that you don't know where it came from and you don't even know if it works. So that's one of the main benefits of a lot of our medicines here, is that the ingredients are whole, our ingredients are pure, and our ingredients are straight from nature. These are straight from plants. We use only the cleanest, the best oil as the infusion. We use extra virgin olive oil as the infusion because it's a really pure oil. It's the universal oil for infusions. Traditionally, in the Okanagan, we used salves and we had medicines, so we would pound, say, the sunflower. We'd pound it into a poultice, and then we'd mix it with oils, say animal fat or fish oils, because there wasn't any olive farms around, but there was a vast trade network of ulican grease and animal fat, so we'd use that. It's not as accessible nowadays, it's not as easy to get, so we would use that. So as we go through the rest of the ingredients, I'll try to bring up some other traditional, comparisons to salve making, but today we're going to go through a more contemporary salve making process. So today we're going to be using the Okanagan sunflower as our salve making demonstration. So we're going to move on, and I'm going to go over the ingredients, the main bases for this. So one of the main ingredients is the infusion. The infusion is made out of a medicine, a plant medicine, a herb, a flower, and it's mixed with an infusion oil. So universal infusion oil is extra virgin olive oil because it's pure, it has good contents, and it really helps extract the medicinal values from the plant into the liquid so that it can be used for oils, salves, and creams, so it can be expanded and used for topical use in this situation. So when we make an infusion, we take a medicine and we put it into a mason jar. So in this case, we had the sunflowers. So we fill a mason jar with about 1/3 or half with the sunflower heads, and then we fill the rest of the bottle up with olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Like I said previously, when Okanagans traditionally would make salves, we would use fish oils like ulican grease that we traded for from the coast, or we would use animal fats that we could find here locally. But since we live in times of olive oil and supermarkets, we're going to use this today. So once they're infused, they're mixed together, we shake them up for a bit, and then we leave them in the jar for at least 3 weeks. You can do up to 6 months if you want. The longer you leave the plant in the oil, the more it extracts the medicine and the more potent it becomes. So we harvest this batch. We jarred it on May 10th, so it's been about 6 weeks. So this is the display model. We had made a batch earlier today, and we're going to make another little batch of it. So the infusion is the first part that requires harvesting, and so once you got that down, you can move on to the other ingredients. So these are the solidify ingredients that I'm going to show right now. What we use nowadays is bee wax. This is a big chunk of local beeswax that we got from the Okanagan Valley here. We like to use the local stuff. You can shred it up with a shredder. It melts faster, and it's good to shop local, and it's a really good quality if you buy it from a nearby source. So we shred it up with a little shredder. It takes a bit of time, and it comes out looking kind of fluffy, kind of like mozzarella cheese. This is the best method, I think, for getting the solidifier, the beeswax, when we mix it in. But if you don't have time, or you just don't want to shred stuff, you can buy pre-shredded bee wax. It comes in these little pebbles. They melt differently, but they get the job done. So we add that into the salve that acts as a solidifier. And then we also use coconut oil. refined coconut oil. It's sort of a midpoint between a solidifier and a fat to infuse things. So in today's recipe, we're going to add about 1 cup of infusion oil, half a cup of beeswax, and 1 tablespoon of coconut oil. So, when I was talking about the beeswax, this beeswax comes from European honeybees, which aren't indigenous to the local Okanagan area. I've heard, I don't want to say hundreds, but I've heard there's a variety of indigenous bees that exist in the Okanagan. A lot of them are solitary bees, but there are some that have smaller colonies. So previous to access to European honeybee wax, you could use beeswax from these indigenous bees. But what would be more common is saps from ponderosa pine or other type of pine trees. You can collect the sap from that, melt it and use it, and it works as a solidifier as well. If you want to go out, find a nice sappy tree and scrape it off. Sounds like a really genuine way to make it, but for the sake of time, we're using beeswax. So the process of putting it together is what we'll do next. So when we make salves, we use a double boiler. So we have a porcelain pot that's inside of a regular pot. There's a little bit of water in there. The reason why we use a porcelain pot in a double boiler is so that the medicine and the oil doesn't burn. Since we're using extra virgin olive oil, it can tend to burn if it gets too hot. So we use a double boiler for the sake of keeping things nice and warm, but not too hot and burnt. So the process here is we take a strainer and we pour the oils, which contain the medicinal value of the plant now, into the pot. We're going to add about a cup. There's a measuring thing inside of here. So, cool. So we've added a cup of the infusion oil into the pot. After that, we add, since we're only using half a cup, or we're using 1 cup of the infusion oil, we're going to use half a cup of the beeswax for the solidifier. So I'll just use half of this cup. And then we'll add a tablespoon of coconut oil. So we have our stove turned up to about a medium heat. Leave it that high until the water in the double boiler starts to boil. Then after that, we turn it down a little bit. So we add the ingredients together and we stir it around. And we stir it around for about 15 to 20 minutes until the beeswax and the coconut oil has completely melted and is infused into the oils. So that's going to take a bit. So I'll show you what it looks like to shave off some of the beeswax, I guess. It's pretty easy. Use the right side of this grater. So it comes off like that. It does take time and it's kind of labor intensive, so that's why some people might buy the pre-made beeswax. Okay. So now that some time has passed, the oil is all infused together. The coconut oil is melted, the beeswax is melted nicely, so it's all infused with the medicine and the sunflower oil. So we're going to remove it from the heat and give it a couple stirs with our stirring stick way over here. How did that happen? So we're going to infuse A last modern ingredient. We'll put vitamin E inside of the salve. It helps preserve it, it helps with shelf life. You can use grapeseed oil or lavender oil or just a capsule of vitamin E. And you pop it open. It explodes in your face, but most of it got in there. And you stir that in. One of the uses and benefits of salves, traditionally for Okanagan people, and for anyone really, is that once it hardens, it's easy to carry around. You can take medicine that was usually available only in the springtime and use it in the winter. Say you're at a campfire and you burn yourself on a fire, you can whip out your sunflower salve, put it on your burn for a bit. It'll help the pain go away, it'll help it heal, and you don't have to wait for springtime to pick a flower because it's already in your pocket, it's already in your medicine bag, it's already in your container. So today's we use, ideally, the best thing you can keep your salve in is a black or dark glass container. It's good to use glass so it doesn't, I don't know, if you don't like plastic. I heard glass is better, but the reason why the black one is better is because it helps prevent damage from sunlight. Because if sunlight gets to you, it can lead to some unwanted melting and that can harm the medicinal value because it's not stored. So you want to store them in dark places. You want to store your salves in dark places so that doesn't get any light damage. You can also use medicine jar or mason jars like this. Or if you're doing small samples and it's cooled off enough, you can use little plastic containers. But you don't want to pour the salve in too early because it might melt the plastic. But most plastic's hard enough that it won't. But. So we're going to do a little pour here. So I'm just grabbing paper towels so that'll catch any oil that wants to sneak away. Carefully pour into here. You can see particles from the sunflower. And we let it sit until it hardens. Keep it, rub your fingers on it, apply it to your areas. Keep your skin nice and creamy and safe. Well, thank you for watching this short tutorial on how to make a salve. There's plenty of information available online. I'm glad you took the time to watch this short video, and hopefully it might pique your interests and maybe pique your curiosities and you might want to try it on your own.